Okay, we're joined today by Stewart Dalby, who's editor of Oilbarrel.com. I believe that this is an exciting week in the onshore oil industry.
It most certainly is. First of all, we've had the coalition of Egden, Europa Oil and Gas and Union Jack Oil drilling the Wrestle 1 well in the East Midlands and coming up with oil shows, and they're about to test it and could progress. Now, this is not the kind of stuff that BP is going to be interested in, but it's small beer. I mean, the amount of oil that is there is 2.7 million barrels, but it can be transformational for a small British company onshore. First of all, it's cheap to drill. Secondly, it's very cheap to monetize. It's almost as if you just got to put a few barrels on the back of a barrel. Now, Europa, for example, has been producing about 165 barrels a day from its existing, and it says this find could be transformational for us. In other words, for a small English onshore specialist, 200 barrels a day is transformational. It's more than keeps the lights on.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
It doesn't sound a lot, but it is in relative terms. And so they've all been waiting for this, and the shareholders, they're mostly retail shareholders on this, are very glad because the shares of Europa went up about 5.6% to 7.25p. Now, Egden's the operator. Now, they're an onshore specialist. They've got placings all over the place, and they've got into the shale boom. They're one of the three companies, UK companies, that have gone into the shale boom. So their shares have gone mad. They went up to 35p at one time, having dawdled around 11p for years. But they came back, and they've gone up from 14p to 19.5. So now they're going on to do Burton in the Wolds, and Europa is going on to do lime kiln. It's called lime kiln. For these companies, it's not quite company making, but it's sufficient to the day. You know, it's good now.
Well, I mean, they're delivering as well. I mean, that's the other thing. That it's not sort of, it's not like the forecast. It's like 2018, 19, 20. We're waiting, and so nothing's.
Not quite so. And
so here it's actually, it's all close to home, relatively quick. It doesn't have to be a lot to be a good investment for a small investor.
Yeah. Now, of course, the other one, and this is a very interesting phenomenon. David Lenny Gas and Neil Ritson have got two small companies. One's called Lenny Gas and Oil, and the other one's called Solo. And Lenny Gas and Oil has done extremely well in Trinidad. Neil Ritson is a very, very good chief operator. Now, let me take you back to March. Lenny Gas and Oil was involved in litigation with Mediterranean Oil and Gas over a concession in Malta. Lenny lost. The shares were 0.6%. They've got this concession in Trinidad, which was a big oil province, but came the shale revolution. They went for a dash for gas, so there's lots of oil lying about there. Came the shale revolution, Trinidad was no longer into gas, and all the companies like Lenny, like Range Resources, and like Trinity went in there and got small concessions. Now, Lenny was picking the low-lying fruit. They were revisiting old wells, nodding donkeys and that kind of thing, and they were producing okay. It was about 300 barrels a day. The Neil Ritson decided that if they dug deeper, if they went much deeper, they could probably get a lot more, and he was proven right. Instead of getting 60 barrels a day, they were getting 260 barrels a day. So they've redeveloped old wells in the deeper zones, and they are now up to about 1,000 barrels. The shares have gone from 0.6 to 5.4. That is some improvement, you will agree.
0.6 when I first spotted and recommended them as well.
Right,
so that was good timing.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, at the moment, I think the peak has been around 7 pence. I mean, what is? I mean, obviously it's a loaded question, but in terms of upside, is there any way of calculating what the upside might be?
Well, I mean, I'm guided by Barney Gray, by this, who's the house broker, and he would say these things, wouldn't he? But he says he thinks target price has been reached, which is a pretty good rise. But there's a lot more to come because there's a lot of old concessions there which haven't been explored, and this is the whole thing. It was just lying fallow. And unlike, say, the North Sea, or in America, you've got what's known as the materiality threshold. All these things were found by the big boys years ago, but it's just too small for them. So there's opportunity for small cap companies like Lenny. But the other interesting phenomenon of the week really is that Solo, which is the sister company of Lenny, has been a bit of a dog. I mean, it's not a conventional E&P, it's an investment company. David Lennigas has got lots of little bits and pieces all over the place. And so it wants to take small stakes, ideally less than 10%, in various bits and pieces. And Solo has got this huge, well, it's got a 25% interest in Ruvuma concession in Tanzania, where Amanex is the operator with 75%, and that's a huge discovery, but nothing's happened because Amanex hasn't had any cash. So that's got a lot of potential. But they've also got something in Canada, which is a dog, and they've got this thing in the UK called Horse Hill. And it's an old well, an old shell well, drilled ages ago, very near Gatwick Airport. And they decided that they will revisit it. Now, you may know that Surrey is terribly worried about fracking, and they've held up for Eglin's Holmwood thing for 2 years.
So this is the not in my backyard reason.
This totally, but this is not fracking. This is a conventional vertical well, and Neil believes that Shell drilled in the wrong place. Now, as onshore stuff goes, there's 87. They reckon there's 87 million barrels mean reserves there, and about 164 gas. So they decided that they would drill this. It's taken a long time to get approved. Well, it always does on UK, onshore UK. And they're drilling three Jurassic, what I reckon is 87 million. And that's the Jurassic is slightly shallower than the Triassic, and the Triassic's deeper. And the old previous operator reckons there's gas there. Now that shares were dawdling along for about a year at 0.15. When the retail guys got hold of this, shares began to motor. And 2 weeks ago, they said about oil shows in the first Jurassic. When the shares, by that time, the shares were gone up to over 1p. They came back a bit to 7.2 in the general.
0.7.
0.7, yeah, last week, and then they said they've done the third level casing. So that means they've done all the Jurassic, and they're logging it, and they sound very, very positive. Shares now back up to 0.97. So we should have the result of that any day, and I would expect that they would do quite well.
Stewart Dalby from Oilbarrel, thanks for speaking with us today.
You're welcome, Dave. Thanks.